Welcome back to the front page. I'm joined here by Jim Ball in Sydney and the fantastic Caleb Bond in Adelaide. Now, fellas, I hope your US politics is strong because we've got polling data to go through and we've got a little bit of a scandal in the Democrats. Nancy Pelosi appears to be losing control of her own party. Now, there's a story here from the New York Times which has just been published. It says Pelosi, trying to save a House majority, fends off angst over Sanders. Caleb, what do you make of this? Bernie Sanders is obviously the front runner, not in Carolina, but he's the front runner in the national poll. How do you see this playing out in the Democratic primaries?
Look, it's an interesting case for the Democrats, isn't it? Because you've got, on one hand, much like the Labor Party here in Australia, you've got the sort of socialist, greenie type left wanting to pull the party in one direction, and then you've got the moderates who want to pull the party in the other direction. Now, I tend to think that if you're going to actually seriously fight an election, you need to put up a moderate as opposed to someone like Bernie Sanders. Sanders will play well to a certain base within the Democrats, but the problem with Sanders, and I suspect he will be their nominee, is that there is not a single person who at the last presidential election in the US who voted for Donald Trump who is going to look at Bernie Sanders and go, I like the cut of his jib, because they are so completely different in every way that there is not a single person that you're going to be able to drag from Trump to Sanders. And that's really the number one job of the Democrats here, is to get people who voted for Trump last time to go, maybe this Democrat guy will be better. Now, I'm not sure the Democrats actually have anyone they can put up who will hold a torch to Trump. Probably their best chance is Bloomberg, but there's really no one there who I think can actually put up a genuine fight to Trump. So they're in deep trouble, and Pelosi, amongst other people in the Democrats, are worried about Sanders because that's not the party that they see themselves being part of, and they're worried about losing their own control. They think that they, once they are in Parliament, have the ability to control the party, but then when they realise that it's actually the members out there who get to vote at the caucuses who make the decisions about who runs the party, they get very scared. They're worried that their own bases and their power is going to be eroded.
And let's run through some of the numbers. So we do have some polling which has just been released. South Carolina is only a few days away, and it looks like Joe Biden, as he has predicted, is right at the top. So Joe Biden's at 36%. He's followed by Sanders, who's at 16%. Then Tom Steyer at 15%, and Elizabeth Warren barely hanging in there at 8%. Pete Buttigieg barely on the chart at all at 6%. Jim, how do you think that has changed? There was an earlier poll which was putting Biden and Bernie Sanders neck and neck. It had a 6% margin, and then all the punters were saying that, well, that puts him in potential for winning this.
Well, look, maybe it's a rogue poll because it doesn't gel with other stuff we've seen with Sanders way out in front. The thing is, they go with Sanders, that's the end of the Democrats, if he's the nominee. And if they try and roll him, as they did in 2016, rig the contest against him, all hell will break loose. All the Bernie bros, they'll all go and they just won't turn out to vote. There'll be civil war within the Democrats. Either scenario, it's just going to be an annus horribilis again for the Democrats.
Yeah, and Caleb, if we go through the number of delegates that the candidates have managed to pick up so far, we've got 45 for Bernie Sanders, 25 for Pete Buttigieg, 15 for Joe Biden. So really, this is his only chance to turn on his race before he has to call it quits. So this poll, it's really a bit of a lifeline for him.
Yeah, I mean, and it's completely out of kilter with, as Jim says, what has happened across the rest of the US. I mean, the problem for the Democrats is you look at the people that they have to choose from. You've got sleepy Joe Biden, who every time he gets up on stage manages to embarrass himself. You've got the crazy uncle Bernie Sanders, who is basically like the US version of Jeremy Corbyn, totally unelectable, unreconstructed socialist, says things that you go, not sure about that, but you're old, so I'll let you get away with it. You've got Elizabeth Warren, who pretended to be Native American for a long time. You've got Pete Buttigieg, who you look at and go, you are just so clinical and boring that
he's the human hologram
for you anyway. Like, there is literally no one to choose from in the Democratic mob who is any good. So look, you may as well chuck up Bernie's. I mean, and then you got Mike Bloomberg, who's just some egotistical billionaire who's throwing around his money like it's confetti and trying to buy himself into the presidency. I mean, you just pick any one of them. It doesn't really matter who it is. Just pick one, throw them to the dogs, let the electorate go out and draw blood, and then say, OK, we buggered that up, let's try again next time.
Now, Jim, before we have to call it quits tonight, I'd like to hear your thoughts on Mike Bloomberg, because, as Caleb says, he is a moderate from a policy point of view. He thinks he could do a deal with the Republicans should he be the candidate. But he did have all these allegations against women's surfers, and he's been asked to let them off their non-disclosure agreements. How do you think that will play out?
And his Achilles heel is his links into China. He doesn't think that Xi is a dictator. He believes that people can basically get Xi to do what they want at any time. Ask the people of Hong Kong about that. And he's got very, very, very lengthy, deep business links with Bloomberg into China. So and with all the friction that's been going on between the trade deals and all of that kind of thing, Trump's just he's going to totally gut and fillet and eviscerate him.